to the last stand with funk.
Episode 128 of Amari Purple Talk, the music podcast, where we talk about all things Prince, Prince-related artists, music, videos, and everything in the purple world of the purple musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your host for the festivities this evening, and it's nice to be back. Took a bit of an unexpected break. Well, maybe not unexpected, but kind of got overwhelmed by some projects. Also with the new format with Amari Purple Talk, from the recording to the editing to the uploading. Just trying to get acclimated to the new schedule, immaculated to the new freedom. Freedom is a beautiful thing. Also too, especially, and also last week was our anniversary, my wife and I, 7 years and counting, and also was her birthday the day after the anniversary as well. So, so just took a little break from the show for a bit. Like I said, some other projects as well. Also had to cancel one guest appearance, but going to make that up. So there's that, and also trying to line up guests for the next round of episodes. We're getting kind of into the holiday season as well. So, but thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for the patience. Thanks for the anniversary shout outs on Facebook. But here it is, episode 128, and here we go. And I want to really start off the episode with kind of an initial reaction to the release as this is being recorded. It's November 11th, 2022. And today, the Morris Day album, Last Call, dropped today officially. I got to listen to it on streaming in the morning on the way to work today. So I got through about maybe half the album on the way. And my initial reaction then was, yeah, I enjoyed it. Just the tracks that I heard thus far. Probably out of that round, maybe the only one I heard previously was the single Used to Be a Player featuring Snoop Dogg. I've done a reaction to that track. If you go to the Patreon page, you can hear that review of it. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Now, for those, if you're looking for that 80s, that sort of, I don't know, almost cliche Minneapolis sound or that Minneapolis funk, you won't find it on this album, but that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a very solid album. The production on it is very solid. And they're nice tracks. I guess you would call it, I don't know, maybe adult contemporary R&B. I mean, I don't listen to radio much. Maybe if I do, it's more Sirius XM type stuff. But yeah, I mean, I can hear a lot of these tracks, listening to FM radio, again, it's very, very solid. But I pre-ordered the CD and it did arrive on time today. It'd been sitting out on the front for a while, like, oh yeah, something did come today, and ran outside. And actually, just before I was getting ready to tape the show, I was like, wait a minute, oh yeah, that Morris Day's album is supposed to be on the front porch by now. And yeah, there it was, sitting there under the little welcome mat, so went and got it, Put it in the old Sony boombox, and I will say this because it passed the Sony boombox test. I would say the absolute best listening experience for this album would be to play it on the best quality sound system you can find. And that's even if you're streaming, but I highly recommend the physical media on this. Just kind of skipping through the tracks on the Sony boombox. It sounds to me it's the best listening experience. It's more dynamic range. With all your bass heavy instruments, whether it's the drum machines, the bass keyboards, or the bass guitar, or whatever. Those tones have more of a range and a deepness to it that it really helps elevate the tracks on the album. I'll give this a deeper dive and probably do an official review, probably next episode or episode after I've had some time to listen to it and get into it. But there's one song, In My Ride. Actually, that was on a previous Morris Day release. Actually was credited to Morris Day and the Time, which I believe the title was called It's About Time, which was an album mainly of live tracks, with the sort of post Original 7, post Purple Rain lineup of the time, that has been touring consistently, for the last 20 some odd years. But there were like 4 or 5 tracks at the end of that CD, that were studio cuts. And I can't escape, but one of my favorites on that was this In My Ride. And it's, with a collab with Jazzy Faye and E40. And it was one of my favorite tracks on that CD, out of the studio stuff that was part of that collection. It's on this CD, Last Call, as well, but you can tell there's a slight remix. I haven't done an official A and B comparison, but I noticed listening to it, it has a different sound. Like there's different nuances that I never heard from the It's About Time version of it. But I would say kind of like with maybe the instrumental breakdown, it is longer, I think, on the It's About Time. But this is, it's mixed well for this album, and what's being presented in these songs here. But yeah, it's one of the standout tracks even on this one, even though it's an older track. It's still one of my favorites on here. The single Too Much Girl featuring Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. I haven't had a chance to preview it when it was dropped as a single. I kind of listened to it a little bit. Kind of same thing with this. I got to listen to it a little bit this morning and just kind of skipping through it with the physical media. And, it gives the album some, diversity. It's not just all hip hop. It's not just all funk. You do get some of that Minneapolis flavor. There's some E9 chords in there, and there's some F7, F7 suspended nines in there too, so it does bring that funk, that it does bring that Minneapolis funk in there. But it doesn't overwhelm it, and it doesn't date the album. Like I said, if you're a fan of Morris Day, you can enjoy it. If you're a fan of contemporary R&B, and I mean contemporary as in, whatever a legacy artist, like say maybe like a Charlie Wilson or somebody, what they're doing, and still keeping it fresh, keeping it relevant, then you will enjoy this album. Like I said, again, listen to it on the best quality sound system that you can find, whether that's in the ride or whether that's in your home entertainment system, or like I said, this little Sony boombox, it has its issues with some CDs, but there are CDs that it will play without problems, and luckily this was one of them. So like I said, I'm looking forward to taking a deeper dive with this one. But if you've had a chance to check it out, let me know your thoughts. Well, I'm going to say this too, because the thing to address, and like I said, maybe go into it deeper. I know we kind of covered it. If I've had Alex be on the show, PC Munoz, we kind of touched on it a little bit. But, this is serious. I was reading the liner notes of this, and it's like, yeah, this is a retirement album. This is him retiring as a solo artist. Now, does it mean that the time will eventually reform? There is that news that dropped this week that Morris Day and The Time are going to be getting the sort of, I guess, Lifetime Achievement Award or the Legacy Award at the Soul Train Music Awards. So, is it, will it, I don't know. I've got my thoughts on it. But like I said, I kind of want to, like I say, enjoy this CD for a while, catch that performance, and I'll speculate later. But I don't know, but just going on the liner notes of this, it is kind of bittersweet that, this is a strong CD, but yet this is going to be the last Morris Day CD. And it's like, wow, but hey, he's earned his place in music history, R&B music history, funk music, Prince music. He's earned his spot. So, we just wish him the best, and whatever he decides to do, whether it's getting into other business adventures or endorsements, hopefully maybe one last original 7 album tour, or whether he's just chilling at home enjoying family. He's earned that, and wish him well. So yeah, like I said, going to get deeper into this, The Last Call by Morris Day. Let me know your thoughts if you've heard it, and we'll discuss it in the next couple of episodes. All right, so the next topic, it's hard because there hasn't been a lot of Prince news. Even, I guess, with the old regime of the Prince estate, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, it felt like virtually every quarter there was some type of news about a release, or a release that is dropped or in the process of dropping. And although it doesn't take the place of Prince being here in real time, dropping some new, purple ear snacks on us, there was a consistency. But you have the estate now with the family members running things. You have Primary Wave as part of that decision-making process. And it's been very, very quiet. Very quiet. Too quiet. Too quiet. But, my thoughts on that is that cool. If they're taking the time to get everybody on the same page, because you've got, like I said, you had, even beforehand, you had certain family members that wanted to go one way. Other family members wanted to go another way. And then those family members sold their shares. So now you have this outside entity that is now part of the decision making process. And I want it done right. So if it takes this long to work that part of it out and then come up with a plan, I'm with it. Bring it. That's, because you want that quality. You want that quality. And I get it. There's a lot of people that are just impatient, whether it's, oh, I want everything in the vault, just put it out there now, or, people that are like, oh, are we going to live long enough to, get this record or this super deluxe or that super deluxe, and then you have people that want everything to be a super deluxe. I'm going to be patient. I look at it like, I look at it sort of like this. Look at people that, legacy artists, whether it's a Jimi Hendrix, whether it's the Beatles, whether it's them as a group or as a solo, whether they're solo projects. Frank Zappa, Miles Davis, those artists. And you look at when those artists were in their prime, or when you look at whenever those artists had their classic eras or their classic periods or whatever it was that made them the legends that they still are. And you look at over the last 25, 30, 35 years where, we're in this age of the box set, the legacy. When, somebody like a Elvis died, there was no box sets. It was just reissue the albums or just put out the records or whatever existed. And then maybe some compilations, greatest hits here or a compilation there. Nobody was thinking super deluxe editions or nothing like that back then. It just was what it was. But I would say, starting in the 90s with Bob Dylan, that started, and Frank Zappa, guys like that where their output is so massive and heavily bootlegged. The idea to create these sort of archival sets, not only for just the hardcore fan base, but just for the serious music collector in general. Again, this is the 90s when this stuff started happening. And, you look at, I would say if you really, maybe Bob Dylan is one of the classic examples, who's, I guess, their prime or their peak or whatever you want to call it. Their claim to fame was right there in the 60s. And, you had people probably collecting bootlegs just like, we collect the Prince bootlegs and all of that and trading them back and forth and arguing about which bootleg was the best, this performance here or this studio outtake there. And they're wishing they had an official copy or a clean copy or something of that material. And, Dylan being kind of one of the first artists to be bootlegged like that. That started in like maybe the early 70s, maybe like 1970, 71 when that type of stuff started. So you got to think about that fan and how old that fan was. If they were like teenagers in 1970, 71, or if they were teenagers, when Bob Dylan was having the hits in the 60s, and just grew up with him, you know, the way most of us grew up with Prince. And you get to the 90s and how old those cats were by then, you know, if they were in their 40s by then or their 50s by then, you know, and just now, and just starting to get the first 3 disc or 3 album set of Bob Dylan tracks unreleased from the vault and all this, you know. Look at Hendrix, where there was this battle, you know, because his father had the rights to everything and got swindled out of that. And it took about 20 years of lawsuits and legal battles, a whole bit, to get that stuff back. And then once he got it back, you know, him and his daughters, I mean, it's been, you know, amazing, whether it was reissuing the albums, remastering them, making a compilation, you know, on what might have been his last album. And then all the compilations that have come since, the box sets, the live material that has come out. And this is over a 25-year period. And you got to look at people that was in the Hendrix back in the 60s. You know, those people in their 70s and 80s now. You know, and just now getting, let's see, what's the thing that's coming out now? Jimi Hendrix, the Experience Live at the LA Forum. It was a 1969 concert that is just now seeing the light of day. You know, officially, an official release. You know, I don't even know if this had been bootlegged at all, but you know, now it's just now getting an official release. So you gotta, you know, I'm sure that whoever it is, if they're 75 or 80, whatever, and they're, you know, getting a hold of this for the first time, you know, it's something to look forward to. But you also have to be patient. But it's like, it's not like they waited 25 years and then bang, this is the first thing they come out with. You know, like I said, the Hendrix estate has been dropping, you know, banger after banger after banger. And I've heard very few complaints in the fan base about that. You know, I mean, you find some negative in every fan base. You know, you find some, oh, I've got everything in the bootleg, so I don't need to buy it, or because they, you know, officially it sounds terrible since they released it. You know, you're gonna get people like that. And that's fine. Let them be. Let them. You know, if they're happy with their already collected bootlegs, cool. You know, if they're happy with the way Cry of Love came out, or I forget the other 70s compilation. It was done, it was this cat, I forget his name, but Hendrix was on record to his people like, hey, when I die, don't let this dude touch my music. And basically, you know, within 2 years after him being gone, this dude was remixing and overdubbing his stuff. But at the same time, that person's gateway into Hendrix was that, you know, Cry of Love album. And then the other one, I think not Rainbow Bridge, but whatever it was, that was remixed and overdubbed and terrible sounding, whatever. But that was their gateway. And that was the first thing people, you know, those fans, first time experiencing Hendrix. You know, but it led them back to whatever, the classic material. You know, just, excuse me, all of this to say, you know, just be patient. Just be patient. You know, it's, you know, everybody's going to get something at some point. And, you know, all this division about the 80s and this and the that, and every episode, you know, and it's getting kind of pathetic to have to get on here and say that every week, you know, because like I say, I see very little discourse in other, you know, in other legacy artists, you know, people that have kicked open doors so Prince can do what he was able to do. Like I said, there's very few complaints about anything that the Hendrix estate puts out. Like I said, you do get some of that negativity, but not to the magnitude of whatever. And granted, Jimmy only had 3 albums, really, maybe 4 in his actual lifetime. And I get that, so he never had that chance to where you would have had people saying, "Oh man, damn, that Hendrix disco record sucked," or "Damn, that Hendrix disco album was the best thing ever," or had he started collaborating with Miles Davis, who knows? People would have been like, "Oh, I like the psychedelic stuff, and I like the 2 white guys being there." That was when he was best. And who knows? Who knows what it would have been? Or you have your Led Zeppelins. Granted, you might have some folks that say the first few albums were great, and then when you get to Presence and In Through the Outdoor and Coda, that they'll argue whether that was the worst period or it was just as good as the first 5 or 6 records before that. Some people hate on Houses of the Holy, and it's like, I love that one. But that's music is subjective. It's subjective. But you don't get to, the whole point of an artist is that artist's evolution. If they get to have that evolution period, to have a classic run and then make some mistakes, or maybe create something that was either so far ahead of its time, or what I like to call too the musicians album. You have artists that have that, to where, like, okay, if you are a musician on whatever level, you get that record. But your average mainstream listener, it's like, it's not for them. They don't gravitate towards it. They rather go for whatever the hits were, or whatever radio says was good, or later whatever MTV says was good. Yeah, so like I said, it's let's just celebrate the evolution. For me, like I said, growing up in the 80s, yeah, that was my teenage college years. Of course I'm going to have some affinity for that. Of course, there were ups, downs, highs, lows, everything. And Prince's music was unfolding in real time. One day, when Doves Cry just did not exist, it wasn't there. It wasn't like he wrote it in 1977 and just decided to bring it out in 1984. It just did not exist. And then boom, it's on the radio one day. And I still remember that day in May of 1984. And every time I hear it, it comes back to that. Now, some of you out there, if you were whatever, 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever, and it's 1994, and that Come album drops, and you knew nothing or cared nothing about Prince before then, but that was the one that made you the fan that you are today, or Rainbow Children, if that was your gateway, or Musicology, if that was your gateway into it. And again, you're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever. That whatever that magic period is, yeah, you're going to hold on to that. Because whatever you were going through, the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, you were in love, out of love, family trouble, trauma, happiness, good times. Whatever that magic period of life was, and Prince's music was a part of that, or any artist whatsoever. Whenever, whether it was contemporary or whether it was somebody, yeah, that album was your gateway and you went back and was like, okay, well, I like that album, but I don't like this one. I like this album, don't like. That's all good. But let's stop doing this thing to where we're tearing down other people's enjoyment of the record, or excuse me, of an era. Let's stop tearing each other apart about that. It's like I said, when it was unfolding in real time. Like I said, you couldn't pay me to listen to Prince in 78, 79, 80. You couldn't do it. It took Dirty Mind and the circumstances that brought me to that record to get onto the bandwagon and go back and listen to that and enjoy those two records. And I've talked about mostly For You. I've done a couple of episodes where I've talked about that, and nobody listens. Nobody hears it. Nobody, it's one of the lowest rated episodes in the history of Amari Purple Talk. But to me, it's just as important when I listen to that than, Heat Wave Central Heating album. It's just as important as Earth, Wind and Fire's All in All album to me. It is just as important as the Jacksons' Going Places and Destiny. It just fits. It wasn't as big as those records, but it belongs right there. The feeling and the emotion is still the same in it. But then from Dirty Mind forward, Around the World in a Day was probably the first Prince album where I went, okay, I'm not going to get the same record from this dude twice. And granted, here comes Parade. And it's like, dang, wow, what's he going to do next? To me, Sign of the Times was the record I've always wanted since 1999, to be honest. Like, where it's okay. He's proved that he's this genius and he can do this with the drum machines and all of this other stuff. But Sign of the Times is kind of one of those, you still got your drum machines and your Fairlights and you got all this technology with that record. But there's still some, acoustic and organic stuff going on with that album. That was the record I wanted since 1999. It's just I had to go through Purple Rain and Around the World in a Day and Parade to get to it. But it wasn't like those albums sucked. They didn't. Like I said, some I've enjoyed better than others. I enjoy Parade more than I do Around the World in a Day. But I want an Around the World in a Day Super Deluxe. The more I talk about it, more than I want a Parade Super Deluxe. But like I said, Diamonds, and sometimes there are these Prince albums that are just classic to me, whatever era. Like Musicology is classic to me. Artificial Age is classic to me. And then there are some where it's like, okay, I'm only going to like 2 or 3 songs on it. Now, that doesn't take away from somebody saying that whatever album that was, it's like in this particular case with me, Planet Earth. It's not my favorite album, but there's 2 or 3 things that I like on it. And I do try to go listen to it again and again, but I'll play 2010 more than I'll play Planet Earth. And not a lot of people like that record, but I love that record. Lotus Flower, I enjoy more than Planet Earth. 3121, to me, at first, I didn't enjoy it as much as Musicology. Now I enjoy it just as much, if not more. So that's the beauty of having those things unfold and going with that artist on the journey through their evolution. It's cool to have your favorites. But like I say, let's kind of just stop, putting each other down and all this other stuff. I know there was something today, again, talking about Around the World in a Day, and what would a Super Deluxe be like? And, there was the idea of putting on, because I think there's this pattern to where they think every Super Deluxe has to have a live show that goes with it. Well, there was no real tour behind Around the World in a Day. He was still touring Purple Rain, even I think maybe barely a month after Around the World in a Day came out. So it's like not every album needs that live album or that live Blu-ray to go with it. But one of the ideas I had was like, okay, cool, don't do that, but do like a 5.1 surround mix on a Blu-ray, and put some music videos on it. And I kind of got this criticism about, they're not going to spend money putting on surround remix. It was a flop. A flop compared to what? Not everybody's trying to be Thriller. Only Michael Jackson cared about trying to top Thriller, which is one of the criticisms I've always had about Michael post Thriller. Was instead of, granted, great songwriter, he's done some great stuff. I guess album wise, again, I might not have enjoyed the entire album, but there was always something on an album post Thriller that I thought was magnificent. It may not have been the whole album, but there were 2 or 3, 4 or 5 songs that were just like, damn, these are the most amazing songs ever. But I think the difference between him and Prince was where Prince was just being guided by, well, not to say Michael wasn't guided by spirit either, but Prince wasn't interested in trying to do Purple Rain 2 or 1999 Part 2. It was too easy. It was too simple. And with the fact that Purple Rain was as big as Thriller, that's scary because it brought, it's getting to that mountaintop and seeing that the myth is bigger than reality. And that's easy for us to judge, because we haven't had that on any level. I don't care what level you're on, really. But it's easy for us to kind of just judge it and say like, oh, it's easy to say, oh, he should have easily done this or he should have easily done that or not do this and not do that. Nah, that's been too easy for him to do. And part of Around the World in a Day was to put as much distance between Purple Rain as possible. And granted, okay, Purple Rain sold 25 million, 30 million or something like that. And Around the World Today only sold 6 million. Oh, a measly 6 million, folks. Ooh, that big flop that one is. You know how many people would kill to have 6 million copies of a record? Even by today's standards? I know record companies are, kind of like, oh, you have to sell 1 million out the box. But it's still not an easy feat to accomplish. I don't care how good your record is. It's not an easy feat, but like I say, there's people out that are just easily programmed by, oh, this says you have to be number one, or this says you have to sell 1 million copies. And I'm sorry, there's people that sell 1 million copies that sound like crap. Real crap. And yet and still, there's some absolute musical geniuses out there that can't even sell 1 copy. And it's not because they don't have it. They may not have what, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But the bottom line is this, let's just stop beefing with one another. Let's enjoy the evolution of the artists, and embrace all the fake. Because like I said, the beauty of it is getting a chance to have enjoyed the journey up until April 21st, 2016. That's the beauty of it. It's like, yeah, I love the 80s. I'm not trying to go back. Nah, it was cool for then, whatever was happening in 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, whatever. It was cool. But at 56, I ain't trying to go back. It was cool to have the Jerry curled in, but I don't want it back. Leave it there. Leave it there in the 80s. Just leave it, and that's the whole point. I'm sure a lot of us have great memories of the thrilling days of yesteryear. But, you're not trying to go back, because hopefully what you're doing now, you're either just as happy, if not happier. And if not, that's the goal, is to make things just as happy, if not happier, to do that. And like I say, I mean, it was cool listening to whatever, Dirty Mind, 1999. And then I still enjoy listening to that. It's nice to go back. But I think what I'm going to do somewhere down the road is an episode where I kind of go through that journey, to where, like I said, I was 15, when I was listening to Dirty Mind for the first time. And I might, do an episode where I kind of chronicle that journey, to where you get to, once you get past, I would say, Love, Sexy, and Batman, to where you would find that one Prince album, say like Take Graffiti Bridge, that, I was so jazzed on the Rolling Stone interview of it, that like, because I read that like literally the day before the album dropped. And the level of excitement listening to the songs, before the movie ruined it, and it took about 15, 20 years to get back to the original feeling I had about that record. But, that level of excitement, or that level of excitement from reading that Vibe magazine cover story from 1994, that interview, that level of excitement was just as great. And if not, maybe, I think for a while, depending on what day it was, greater than whatever, when, Purple Rain dropped, or Sign of the Times dropped, or whatever. There was always that level of excitement. It never got old. I never jumped off the bandwagon for it. So I might do an episode to kind of chronicle that, hopefully to kind of put in perspective of, there are those of us that aren't stuck either in yesterday, or either stuck in whatever it is that you're stuck on, to appreciate the journey, the entire journey. And few artists get to do that. Very few get to have a career like that, where you have, and he's one of those few, like I say, like a Zappa, like a Dylan, where you got all this material that people are just clamoring to hear, in some way, shape, or form. And for them to finally provide a platform or an outlet to where you can have access to that music officially from that artist, endorsed by that artist, is very few. Very, very few where you get that. So I don't know. Like I said, that was kind of a little rant. Just kind of about the state of the fandom, and the fact that, like I said, the estate has been quiet. So let's just be patient. We're going to get some stuff, and unfortunately, most of us are going to be very old by the time we get certain things. But, let's just try to enjoy the moment. So whatever comes out, super deluxe edition of whatever, I don't care what it is. It could be the Symbol record. It could be the Diamonds and Pearls. It could be this. You can best believe I am going to enjoy that release. And then if it's something that, like, I might skip, like I skipped the hits 1 and 2 on vinyl, I don't personally feel I need it. Maybe eventually someday I might get it if I feel that much of a completist about it. But at the same time, I'm still trying to absorb the 1999 Super Deluxe. I'm still trying to absorb the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe. I got to go back to Welcome to America. I still got to absorb that too. So whatever's coming, I'm going to enjoy it. And then whatever the project that will make me the most excited, then I'm going to be the most excited about that. All right, and now, folks, the moment you've all been waiting for is the talk about the Chocolate Invasion and Slaughterhouse. I was, again, like I said, the estate has been so quiet. But like I said, there was a period where Sony Legacy was dropping that sort of trilogy of albums of the sort of 1995 and beyond of Prince. And it was getting to the point I was really hoping for a reissue, or maybe an official reissue, or excuse me, not even a reissue. I mean, if you're talking MPG Music Club, it's a reissue. But these particular albums didn't exist on any other physical media. It was only available through download. And there were either people that sort of created their own artwork for it, or there was official artwork for it that you could download and make your own sort of CD covers and stuff, which is what I've got. So they kind of look like as much as a physical release as possible. But both of these were dropped on March 29th of 2004 on the MPG Music Club. It would download only. And again, this is what I'm talking about. That March 24th, or excuse me, March 29th of 2004, as a Prince whoo, this one was big. I mean, because talking about bootlegs, and like I said, we were kind of aware of them. We had seen very little. Like, I think Alex B had got, there was a Sign of the Times show. I forget which one it was. I remember him getting that on vinyl. And I made a tape off of that. And that was it. And then, maybe a couple of things by some other people, had a couple of things here and there. But by the time I really got immersed in that stuff, though, that was exciting. That was, the initial excitement. As I gotten older, it was still interesting. It's, still interesting to me now, but even more so back then, because it was like this whole new world that was opening up, this whole new Prince universe, this whole new portal. And it was Prince stuff, it was like getting stuff from another universe almost, these bootlegs and everything. But for Prince to get to the level that he had been fighting for all through the mid to late 90s, and to be in the position to release as much music as he wanted this day, because it wasn't just Chocolate Invasion and Slaughterhouse, it was C Note and One Night Alone, Piano and Voice, Expectation, I think about 2 or 3 other things. And, my wallet was taking a beating on that day. Because then you also had Musicology that dropped as well on that day. And then there were like a couple of virtual B-sides, like Magnificent and then Glass Cutter and stuff like that. And it was just like, man, I don't have enough purple croutons to cover this. But, eventually over time, because the stuff wasn't going anywhere, to download that. But the sort of the centerpiece of all of that was the Chocolate Invasion and Slaughterhouse and those tracks. And tracks on that were part of either the unreleased High album. There was also like a NPG album called Peace that some of these tracks were supposed to be a part of. And then others were just tracks. And, like I said, just that level of excitement. Because, I mean, this wasn't dull. This wasn't some crappy copy that you had to strain your ears and, crank everything up past 11. And even when you cranked it past 11, it still had all that tape hiss and that repetition. It was all of that stuff going on with it. You didn't have any of that with this. This was it. This is everything that a Prince fan had dreamed of, literally. And, I thought for sure these were going to get issued in physical media. And I hope they still do. Like I said, these were very strong cuts. Judas Smile was just funky as all get out. You Make My Sunshine. That's a shame that didn't get like massive radio play or massive video rotation, because, Prince was fighting against the system. He was fighting the power, so he didn't quite have that major label access that could have marketed that and promoted that to where, again, this stuff, those songs stand up to anything in the classic era for me. And like I said, to where I grew up in the 80s, this stuff was just as good. Because, you were dealing with all of that with the contract obligation. So it was a real struggle. But like I said, very few of us jumped off the bandwagon. I didn't jump off the bandwagon. Because again, it was one of those things like, well, there's something, you're going to have something interesting, even if it's just contract obligation. His contract obligation would make another artist's, lifetime career. Literally. And, so it was nice to get this material finally that wasn't part of all that baggage. And, you had New Power Soul again, something that had, for me, I enjoyed listening to it. I didn't really think of it as a Prince album, even though technically it's a Prince album. But there's stuff on it that I enjoy a lot, listening to. And then Rave Into the Joy Fantastic, same thing. Rave Into. Actually, I'm going to do maybe not a CD versus vinyl, but something kind of pitting those two against each other and finally deciding which one I like the best. But, Chocolate Invasion, you had the original version of The Dance, which was on 3121. Man, there's so many. Like I said, Judas Smile was a favorite. Yeah, let's see. Super Cute, Vavoom, Underneath the Cream, Silicone, Golden Parachute. Yeah, I mean, these were just phenomenal songs. And, like I said, to be relegated to something just for the fans, that in one way it's special, but at the same time, I wish this was an official album. Like, this should have been something that definitely would have worked preceding something like a musicology. Yeah, and I mean, it took let's see, all of 2004, 2005, I think even going into 2006, I kept these songs in constant rotation. And I don't know. I don't think there's not a dull moment. I mean, there's some songs I enjoy more than others on it. Let's see. When I Lay My Hands on You, that was one. The deepness of that, over the years, my listening to that just gets, I enjoy it more every time I hear it. Where before I might have skipped it once or twice just to kind of get to Judas Smile, but now I can just put that on, listen to it, go into Judas Smile, go into Super Cute, Underneath the Cream. The Dance, I know, between that and the 3121 version, my favorite is the one that I'm listening to at the moment. It's kind of like, on the one hand, it's like, oh, I like that one better, but no, there's still some things I love about that one. So for me, it's whichever version I'm listening to at the moment is the favorite version. P's 2045 Radical Man. That was on the Bamboozled soundtrack. And I remember because that was the first record where, when he went back to Prince, that was the first thing officially that came out where it said Prince again on it. And it was like, I really didn't know, because I was like, well, this is a song for the movie. But then, is this going to be indicative of his sound going forward? Because it was so, I wouldn't say it was devoid of funk, but it wasn't the super deep, heavy funk. And it was kind of going into that direction of what Rainbow Children, which the material on that to me is stronger than this. But it was still exciting to hear, and I remember playing that over and over and over again, just like, where is he going to go next with this? Is this going to be a permanent thing? It's more mature sound, but what's next? And that was the beauty of it. Again, there was always that sort of what's next factor with that. I don't know. I might do a video. I don't know. Maybe not. Because like I said, I enjoy both. And they sort of belong together. I know I was thinking as I'm doing this episode, because, wasn't Speaker Box and the Love Below by Outkast, was that the year before this or right around the same time? So anybody in the comments, just kind of, drop that knowledge on what took place first. But, technically Prince really wanted to do this first, or the idea there was first. It was just too far ahead of his time with Come and the Gold Experience. But then you fast forward, and then, again, you got that Speaker Box, Love Below, the two albums that are radically different by the same artist. You had that Beyonce with that one with the Sasha Fierce, and then there was the separate album that did this, that had Single Ladies and all that stuff on it. I think, other people have done, Frank Ocean has done it, I think, put two albums out at the same time like that. But yeah, I mean, to me, so that falls into that sort of category of albums with the two separate albums by the same artist, but they're just, the material is just as strong on each one on that. And again, hopefully these will get some type of physical release. You can do it on Record Store Day if you want, but I would have really loved to seen these get an official release. And I thought for sure this was going to be amongst the next set, because Sony was throwing it out there for a while until 2021, when they got all the rights to everything. The licensing to everything, and they just kind of tossed these aside, and it's like, no, take your time. Well, I guess it wasn't up to them, but the estate should have just taken their time and let Sony just finish out that set of reissues and drop these and then go forward with the plan. So who knows, but in the middle of whatever classic era stuff they may decide to do, or whatever period, there are albums that, regardless of the era, will probably take precedence over these. But somewhere in between, if the estate is listening, folks, somewhere in between, they should, consider dropping the Chocolate Invasion and Slaughterhouse. But what do you think? Were these your favorites, whether it was the MPG Music Club era or if you're just now discovering these two projects? What do you like? What's your favorite song on it? Would you like a physical media release of this on CD and vinyl as well? It is there on streaming for you to listen to. So if you haven't heard these, by all means, check them out. Chocolate Invasion, Slaughterhouse. But leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. And that is going to end this episode of Amari Purple Talk. Thank you once again for tuning in. And again, thanks for all the support. Season 4 has been exciting and still got a lot more to go. Again, kind of rolling into the holidays, but I have a feeling there'll be more solo episodes like this one. But like I said, I do owe a guest. We were supposed to record an episode, but scheduling got a little crazy. So that person will be on within the next couple of episodes or two after this one. And like I said, getting some folks to come back, make some second appearances on the show, or a couple of folks, some 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th appearances. And also there's been some folks reaching out too, wanting to come on as well. So I didn't forget about you, but like I said, these, working on 8 million different projects and, again, getting acclimated to the freedom, because it's like you get all this freedom and it's like, I want to do this, want to do that, want to do this, want to do that. Ooh, cool. I got time to do this. Oh, wait a minute. I got time to do this over here. And then all of a sudden, all that time starts to get full. And then it's like, oh, let me pull back and kind of prioritize some stuff here. So it's all good. And like I say, continue supporting the show, whether it's buying Amari Purple Talk merchandise, supporting the singles, Save Yourself, We Funk to the Last Band. All those links are in the show notes. Hit up the website, amaricommunications.com. And I will continue to do more of this stuff. So, again, thank you, everyone, and see you next week. And until then, create your day and create your life. Peace. This is Amari Purple Talk.